Welcome to the show, Jason.
Thanks for having me.
This is amazing. This is so fun being here at the MindBodyGreen HQ in Brooklyn. One thing that I thought was cool, just as a business practice, and I'm sure you guys do a lot of things here that are cutting edge and innovative in terms of company culture, but right when I walked in, there was a chalkboard that had these cute little drawings on it, and it said, "Welcome, Luke Story." And I thought, that's smart, because you know what? When I walked in, I was like, oh, I'm special. I felt it was a really warm gesture. I was like, that's pretty cool. I bet there's all sorts of things going on here, and hopefully we can get into a little of that, but good. It was nice to see that.
Mission accomplished.
Yeah, totally. I was like, oh, that's very thoughtful. You know, my first thought was like, surely there's more important people showing up here today. Why didn't the sign go for them? You know?
They're coming later.
Yeah.
You're the first one.
I was like, wait, when did they switch out the sign? But yeah, it was cool. So let's get right into it then. In the interest of time, you know, I want to get as much covered as I can here. What's the latest and greatest at MindBodyGreen? Like, what are you super excited about right now?
I think all things wellness. I think we're in this interesting, awesome time where wellness is not just quote unquote wellness. It's an expression of personal values, and it's exciting, all the growth in the world, all the businesses, from consumer products to what's happening in media. It's just, to me, it's like an exciting, awesome time to be in wellness.
Yeah, it certainly is. And I think it's interesting, and you kind of touched on it a little bit, and that's that in general, I've watched the whole thing evolve to where it's become not just about eating a certain diet or, you know, having your green juice or taking herbs, sure. But there's definitely much more mindfulness in the meditation and the spirituality and personal growth and development that's kind of become infused, where it used to be, oh, you were just someone into health food,
yeah,
back in the day.
You just go to Erewhon.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, it's been neat to see that. So you, prior to evolving into this business model, you had back pain, back problems, which I very much relate to, got into yoga, and as I understand it, based on my research, and that evolved you into going like, wow, maybe I can actually, pivot career-wise and do something that I make money at in this industry. What was the very first thing you did that was MindBodyGreen?
So it goes back to the back pain. And so I'm going to be 44 in a couple of weeks. Played basketball at Columbia. It pains me to say 20 years ago. worked on Wall Street as an equities trader. That's what, back then I was a kid who had college debt, no scholarships, wanted to get out of debt. And it was either Wall Street, become an attorney, or a doctor. And I always joke, I didn't have the grades to be a lawyer, and I didn't have an aptitude for science, so Wall Street it was. So I was fortunate enough to do well enough to pay off my college debt, not enough to retire by any means. And then 9/11 happened, and like a lot of New Yorkers at the time was deeply affected by that event, and just started to think there's more. I want to do something else, and left for the startup world and found myself running a startup. It was actually an organic chocolate chip cookie company that was in every Whole Foods market in the country in 2007 and 2008. Company wasn't doing so hot, was trying to raise capital. It was during the recession, extraordinarily stressed, was broke. Found myself flying almost 125,000 miles domestic. I'm 6'7". So just think about what that looks like in a coach seat.
It's not happening.
So the flying, stress, old basketball injury, I had 2 extruded discs in my lower back, pressing on my sciatic nerve, the famous L4, L5, S1.
I know them well. Yeah, my arch enemies.
It's terrible. My right leg was like a lightning rod, excruciating pain. I could not walk. Went to a doctor. He said, you need back surgery. Quite simple. And I have nothing against surgery, but generally see it as a last resort, and said, okay, get a second opinion. And that doctor said the same thing. You need back surgery. And it was almost like an afterthought. He said, maybe some yoga or therapy could help, but, you still need surgery. So my wife, then girlfriend at the time, was into yoga. And I was like, you know what, I'll try yoga. So really light yoga, 5 to 10 minutes in the morning and evening, nothing, crazy, some restorative poses. Started to feel better. And then started to look at, stress, sleep, nutrition. I was a guy as an athlete who was always fit, but something was wrong. I was clearly falling apart in the inside. And so my idea of nutrition back then was a steak and multiple martinis. Like I ate so much steak, my face is on the wall of the Palm Steakhouse in Midtown Manhattan, next to Adam Sandler. Yeah, I'm serious. Next to Adam Sandler and Joe Namath. So like you'll see me immortalized at age 27, and you could look to see the difference between. So is that like that's insane to eat that 1 year. So
you were a pioneer of the carnivore diet.
So like I still eat meat, but when I do, try for grass fed, obviously, and eat a lot more vegetables. But like inflammation. Like I also thought back then, like, I also had kidney stones around like in my 20s, and I thought healthy was eating low-fat cottage cheese with Splenda every fucking morning. Oh my God, and I was just like, what the, so it just had a distorted view, and started to make all these changes. Nutrition was a big one. Started eating more vegetables, learning about inflammation, looking at the environment, made a lot of changes to my life. And yoga was a big part of it. And over the course of 6 months, I completely healed. So I never got back surgery. And I still fly a lot, unfortunately. Now I use miles to upgrade as much as possible.
People always think I'm trying to be, like floss because I always fly first class. I'm like, no, it's literally just, it's too uncomfortable.
I don't fit.
Yeah,
and I barely fit.
I'm 6'2", and I still freak out.
And there's sometimes I'll upgrade in a small flight, and I'm like, fuck, I don't really fit here either.
Yeah.
So it's purely like I need to fit.
Yeah.
So at any rate, like I had completely healed, and I was like, holy cow! Like everyone's got wellness wrong. Print magazines were about vanity and weight loss. And I was like, that's not it. Like, I feel pretty good, but like I'm falling apart. And anything that was more holistic, more connected was like too new agey, too weird. I felt just preach the choir of people live in the west side of LA and go to Erewhon and really didn't speak to quote unquote, normal people who maybe lived, in the middle of the country or not on the coast. And I was like, wait, like there's an opportunity here. Like, this is clearly, I was like, this is the future. Like true wellness is this blend of mental, physical, spiritual, emotional, and environmental well-being. And all these things are interconnected. Hence, MindBodyGreen, one word, not three. Like you can't meditate and eat organic all day, but then like, throw toxic products all over your body and environment. Like that's no good. And clearly, like this was it. And so launched MindBodyGreen out of our apartment in 2009, went all in, and that's sort of how the journey began.
Was the first inception of it, because I don't think I heard of it until it became bigger, and there's all sorts of different streams of content happening now with the brand. Was the first one you sitting down and writing a blog post about, the benefits of green juice or bone broth or...
Sure. Yeah,
what was the first thing?
Like the very first thing, I had the domain earlier, and we didn't know what to do with it. So it was like a version of like Dig, where like we vote up and down articles. And then 2009 was when I was like, okay, I know what to do here. And it was content. And it really started with me writing like the first hundreds of posts. And then my wife, Colleen, supported us financially. She would write on nights and weekends. My fellow co-founders kept their day jobs and would code on nights and weekends. But I was all in, and for 3 years didn't take a salary. It was definitely very stressful.
Wow, that's serious bootstrapping.
Yeah.
3 years is a long time.
It was.
Yeah.
No shit.
When I started, you're like, I remember when I started this podcast, I went for about, I produced it for about 6 months, and then I started to get some ad revenue and stuff, and it started to at least pay for itself, so I'm like,
that didn't happen for us until 2012.
6 months that sounds 3 years sounds like a long ass time to just believe in something and have faith that if you just keep putting your intention and heart and concentrating on the quality of content, that it's eventually going to pay off.
There was a lot of faith, and along with that there was also a lot of doubt and moments where I was like, I don't know if it's going to work, looking for a job, like all those things. But deep down people always ask, like, what would you do if you didn't take a salary? Do that. And I'm like, yeah, I did that for 3 years. Right. So like I know that this is it for me.
And what was the first point at which you made money with this thing? Did you run banner ads?
Yeah, we started to do some advertising in 2012. Like we started to reach enough scale. We started to do in 2012 like 500,000 unique visitors in a month. Now we're at 10 million. But,
damn. Wow.
So that was when you could start to sell and make a little, and like in 2012, it's not like I started paying myself an exorbitant amount of money. Like we're talking like $3,000 a month.
Right.
So like it was something.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, at least you feel like you're not an intern anymore.
Well, I still feel like interns make more than that here. So
there's been times I have this other business called School of Style. It's a fashion school.
Sure.
And there were times we're about to celebrate 10 years on November 8th, actually. And we moved to online now, so it's great. It's an online business, and it's a bit lower touch, as a result. But I remember times where our office admin made more money than me and my partner, or we'd shell out some cash to our interns because we felt bad, and then we wouldn't be able to pay ourselves and things like that. It's a funny thing when people are outside of business and you're watching it grow, and I think people get an erroneous conception sometimes that everyone's just rolling in cash because a name grows and you're seeing popularity of a site or whatever it is, but on the inside, like a lot of people don't understand the wherewithal that one has to have to stick with it until you actually, you have a career in the business that you own.
Mindset.
Yeah.
It's a big thing. We're still not the highest paid employees here.
That's funny.
We're not.
Well, it's amazing actually being in this location, and that we have, a YouTube camera going here that'll show us being interviewed, but perhaps on the way out, I'll do a little B-roll or something, but it's a pretty impressive space. I mean, we're in Brooklyn, and a seemingly nice upscale neighborhood. This is a lot of square footage. How big is this space right here, and how many people work here right now?
So it's 10,000 square feet, and of that 10,000, we've got a 2,500 square foot studio, which you see they're filming in there today. We record all our stuff there. It's about 50 people.
Wow. Yeah. It's amazing.
It's a lot of heads to feed.
I know, dude. I know that sense of responsibility. Right now, I don't have any employees. We have just contractors, and I'm like, oh, this is amazing. I never want to have employees again. I'm happy for you. But I'm like, oh my God. But it was actually cool showing up here too, because there's space to record. Whenever I record in New York City, I'm in some little corner. It's all dark. I never have room for my tripods and stuff. So it was really cool to walk in and be like, oh, sweet. There's beautiful natural lighting. There's ample outlets to plug in everything. So yeah, happy to be here. So as you've watched since forming this thing you've got here, have you watched the health and wellness scene? What are some of the trends in terms of, fitness or health routines, health gadgets, supplements, styles of eating? What have you seen that's kind of come and gone and proved itself to be bogus or not useful? Or even, what things have you seen go and come back? For example, when I first got into this stuff, which was the late 90s, raw food and veganism and juicing was all the rage. People like David Wolf were popularizing
David Avocado Wolf.
Yeah, popularizing that lifestyle. And then everyone went paleo because they got sick being a vegan, or many people did. And then now you've got the medical medium. I read his stuff. I'm like, wow, this is fantastic. And then you finally get to the end, and he's like, yeah, so you should juice vegetables. I'm like, really? We're back here again? We already did that.
Sure.
So what's it been like as an observer and participant for you in terms of what's come and gone?
A lot of things have come and gone. I think where we are today, it is this exciting time in terms of Eastern meets Western. And it's something I've always believed in. So like, Eastern is not always the solution. So like Eastern acupuncture, we could go as far out as shamanism and all that stuff, and Western, Western medicine. And to me, neither is perfect, but it's clear that the combination of Eastern and Western, functional nutrition, functional medicine, if you will, like is the future. Sometimes you need spinach, sometimes you need surgery. And there's science is really catching up there. And what does science say? Science says that we're all unique individuals. We've got, whether it's 23andMe or all the blood tests and labs you can get. And so, some people thrive in a vegan diet, and they can take the blood test to say that. And some people don't. And so paleo and what have you. And I think we're all unique. I'm 6'7", 200 and so pounds, 44 years old. Like, what works for me is not going to work for a 5'3", 23-year-old, 100-pound woman. Most likely not. And I think that's where things are going, which is exciting. And I think, we're all unique. And that applies to, what's hot right now, keto, intermittent fasting, whether I'm vegan, whether I'm paleo, whether I do yoga, whether I do CrossFit, like all of those things, I think we're all unique. And I also think, so like, even though, say, diet is somewhat like religion, and when you challenge people identify with diets, and when you challenge someone's identity, it can lead to a very tough conversation. It's who they are. I think that's sort of like where the diet wars happen. And to me, it's just sort of silly. I think it's important to listen to everyone's point of view and take a little bit from here and take a little bit from there. And this is what works for me. And I think that's what's great. And I think that's where wellness is going. I think, and science is just so exciting right now. Like when I think of science, it's about, well, what are you looking for? It's outcome driven. It's about efficacy. Like we're talking about like the explosion in supplements or what have you. It's like, does this stuff work? And science is really catching up and saying like, this works, this doesn't. You can test for that. This like microbiome, super exciting, but like, science still like catching up there, like very primitive early stages. But it's just exciting. And I think it's finding what works for you. Listening to your body.
I agree. I've found it interesting and funny just to observe how the human ego attaches to certain things. And of course, my ego attaches to whatever. I like my black skinny jeans and my BMW, whatever. You know what I mean? It's like we all have our thing. But it is an interesting phenomenon how people become so identified with the food that they eat, and that becomes like a billboard for this is who and what I am. I always found that strange because I guess I just have more of a utilitarian relationship with food. It's just like, what's the fuel I can put in that doesn't hurt me, that gives me energy, that I can just go live my life? It's not like a big motivating factor. So my particular ego issues haven't so much attached to like, oh, I'm vegan or I'm keto or whatever. But I find it strange that people get so caught up in that because, as you said, it's not only different for each person, but it's different at different times in life.
Absolutely.
Right? So you might go through a phase where you do green juice for 30 days because you just need a reboot, but that's not necessarily sustainable, especially if you're a big guy like you and your junior in size, are. So I like that perspective. And I always try to encourage people, like, don't get caught up in the dogma of what you're eating because it's going to change. Yeah. My brother just did a carnivore diet for like 4 months. And then one night, midnight, he texts me, dude, are you around? I think I need to go to the hospital. Whoa. Now, it wasn't related to the carnivore diet. As it turned out, he had a pulled muscle in his rib or something. But he thought he was falling apart because he had done this carnivore diet, So he stopped doing it and then later found out that it was the rib thing. But you just don't know how long you're even going to carry on with something like that.
I think just being flexible is a good skill for life. Flexible in terms of thinking, and especially when it comes to diet. And I get how people can fall into that trap. So many people come to wellness because of a life-changing event. And it's like, oh my God, this works. I was so sick and this, or like whatever it is. And it's like, this is it. And like they identify with it. And I understand how that happens. But it can also be a little bit dangerous. And that's something at MindBodyGreen we've always been very mindful of. Like you'll see the best and brightest in the vegan world and the paleo world and different opinions. And we'll, and personally, I try not to let people say what they have to say. And I think people are smart enough. They can read a little bit there and hear a little bit there and then make a decision. But it's about function, like functional nutrition. Like that's like what works for you. It's about function. I think most people understand through feeling in their body too, of like, this feels good, this doesn't, and listen to your body.
Right. In terms of, supplements, and I'm sure being in the position that you're in, you have companies sending you stuff all the time, and you have access to every pill, potion, and powder that you could possibly ever want to explore. If I was to sneak in your kitchen right now and open your supplement cabinet, what would I find? What do you enjoy taking, if anything, right now?
Sure, a lot. Well, like unbelievable, interesting category. And yes, like I could send everything. My desk is full of product. I will say that it's been really interesting to like, I've spent a lot of time going deeper there in the past year. What have I found? I found that a lot of it's marketing that trumps science and efficacy. A lot of great storytelling, but I think a lot of products don't work and kill you with information on where stuff comes from, but not science that supports efficacy. So I think that's like super interesting. That's a huge category, and because it's huge and growing and unregulated, like I think the FDA people are starting to pay more attention to that. What you'll find, like for me, like I love the brand Thorne. I have a lot of Thorne products. Like I take like 7 or 8 pills a day. To give you an example of how I approach supplements, like the power of supplements when used properly. So like I'm a tester, my wife is not. So heart disease runs in my family. So like I've been tested for everything heart related, you name it. Everything's fine. I'm in great shape, but I have one marker, homocysteine, that like alone, if high, not good, but debatable. So like my homocysteine was like off the charts. So like so high that my doctor, Frank Lippman, thought it was a mistake.
Wow.
And
did you have to retest?
I did, and it wasn't a mistake.
Oh, damn.
But through the power of taking the right supplement, dropped in 60 days to normal.
What was that magic supplement?
It's a methyl supplement. I could send you the link.
Oh,
but,
cool.
So I was like, wow, like, okay, this is, and there's no like, you know, I asked Frank, like, do I take is it pharmaceutical? Is there surgery? Is there anything else I could diet? He was like, no, you need to take the supplement. Like, this is the only thing.
That's the beauty of functional medicine doctors.
Yeah.
That know their stuff. You know, they're going to try everything they can before prescribing a drug.
But there isn't even one
surgery.
There isn't.
So like, you have no other choice.
This was it. And to me, it's like the power of the right supplement. And I started to go deeper and started looking at supplements. So like, to me, that like super interesting industry, you know, and like the big question with most of them, like, is this marketing or is this real? And I think the gauntlet's going to like come down there in the next like 24 months.
Well, it's amazing because the consumers of said health products are much more discerning than they've ever been because there's so much information available. I mean, you can listen to an entire podcast about one particular supplement or biohacking device, whatever. I mean, I do very dedicated shows sometimes that are just on red light therapy or just on infrared sauna or just on a certain supplement. And I mean, you can really, as someone like me that's creating the content, you can really grill you know, the representative of a company, be like, what's this really about? Is it real? Here's some other things.
It's hard. People like, I think a tactic that a lot of companies use now is they just kill you with information, and then it becomes too much, and like it's just TMI. But like, so you have to be very sophisticated to really understand what works. Yeah. And where like science, and I could talk a whole, but it's super interesting, and I think the world is changing there.
Do you have anything, back to your supplement cabinet, do you have anything that you take when you need to relieve stress or anxiety or to increase energy? Anything that you found that you're like, wow, shit, this really works?
I'm always good at coffee. Definitely works for energy. I love coffee, and I'm the type of guy who can drink coffee at 9 p.m. and still go to bed, even though I don't do that. And I'm pretty good with like stress management and anxiety. I have a very high threshold for the unknown, which is an absolutely necessary quality if you're going to start your own business.
Yeah, if you got 10,000 square feet and 50 people and you're in New York City, I think you have to have a way to deal with that. Yeah.
But sleep, we have a 21-month-old daughter, so like sleep isn't as great as it used to be, and I actually love taking GABA, Pharma GABA, Thorne as a product I love, and like so GABA, magnesium, like jujube, like those are things I love, but like specifically GABA, I love for sleep at night. And like, what do people love? Like, what do I think is interesting? And I think hemp is super interesting. CBD, I think NR for longevity is interesting. I think collagen is interesting, and then those are sort of the supplements I look at in categories, which like are experiencing growth, like there's some science there, and then it's like quality, efficacy, and all that stuff. But like there's so much happening in the category.
The CBD industry is interesting to me. I used to be a huge stoner, so it's interesting from that point of view. I haven't smoked weed in like almost 22 years.
It's
but
like me.
I grew up in Northern California. It was just the fabric of the culture there in the 70s and 80s.
Sure.
So I'm just, the look of it, the smell of it, the whole thing is just like part of my DNA almost at this point. but there is so much happening in the CBD and just hemp industry in general right now. It's really hard to see through the fog when you have 100 brands a week seemingly popping up. And no, we have the best extraction method. We have the best plants. We're the most organic. And at the end of the day, I'm still kind of like, yeah, but does CBD from a hemp plant even do anything? You know, because the stuff from back in the day, the real like alternative medicine use was illegal extracts of the cannabis plant. So the buds, right? The psychoactive in people that had terminal cancer and, seizures, epilepsy, all these kind of things that plant has been useful for. And even like, I would dare say there's a lot of accounts of people getting cured, and I don't even use that word a lot, but there just are. And this is going back, 20 years I started looking into this stuff. But all of the really hardcore healing seems to come from the cannabis plant that has THC and it's psychoactive, and you'd have to take psychoactive doses if you were terminally ill to really get the effects. Right. Do you believe in the hemp plant, the CBD, having effects? Have you noticed any benefits or seen any research that indicates that, wow, yeah, you can use this and really derive benefit from it?
And like, this is a complicated conversation, but I'll say a couple things. One, my view on hemp and CBD is, the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. And I see hemp as the whole. And then the question is like source. So like, where is it coming from? The knock on CBD is like, where is it really coming from in the US? And like the soil, and like, is it the regulation there, and like, is it really organic? What are the methods? Like, is it toxic? Like, it's very like, it's a little bit the wild west, and technically like, you can't. So like, one of the things, like, I do like hemp. Like, I like stuff from Europe, like where the standards are a little higher in terms of quality. I'll mention Thorn is like a great hemp product, like, but like real quality, like they do a good job. So I lean toward hemp. Like CBD is part of the plant and hemp, and it's about like, there are other benefits with the endocannabinoid system with hemp. And then if I look at like the medicinal conversation that's psychoactive, to me, like they're two different conversations. Like if I'm looking for everyday like anxiety, it's that. I think let's talk about like where wellness is today. And I'm someone, in college and so forth, like I did everything. I tried everything, and like now, like I'll drink, but not that much, And so I have a strong point of view on psychedelics and anything that's psychoactive, including THC, and unless it's an extreme situation. So like, unless like, we're talking about cancer or seizures, and like there is like, that's more of the marijuana conversation with psychedelics. Like, unless you're bipolar and all, like there are things, I just don't buy it. I don't think, I go back to like the individual human, and I think it's dangerous to make generalizations around anything that's psychoactive. I have, and speaking anecdotally, like I have friends who did crazy shit in high school and were tripping on Tuesday morning, like during the week, multiple times, and they're and fine. And I know a couple other people that it didn't work with their genetics and ended up, taking their own lives.
Wow.
And so I think it's dangerous to just say like, oh, like microdosing or whatever, like, unless like you've been tested genetically and there's something, like, I think if you do all those things, maybe it's okay. Like, but for some people it can activate the wrong genes, and those genes could be catastrophic. So I also think, as we talk about true wellness, it's about like getting within. And I think anything that's psychoactive is taking you outside of yourself versus going inside. And I'm sure if you talk to like Rich and Julie, who I know you're friends with, like I bet they have a strong point of view on this too. And I just think it's like a little bit of bullshit. It's like, I have friends, I'm not sober, but like sober, like we'll say like, you're getting outside of yourself. Yeah. Like you're just justifying drug. Like it's totally the same bullshit. Like why don't you go within? You could experience, like, talk about like, and I've done all this shit too. So it's like, if you're saying I'm experiencing consciousness or whatever, and I actually need to read Pollan's book. I haven't read it yet. You can, experience that through natural techniques. They're just a little harder, whether it's breath work or meditation, like people, so going back to like the THC site, like I just think overall it's dangerous, and like anything, like I think people like to justify things that are fun. Yeah. And it's justifying drug culture to some degree. Like, oh, I'm sober, but I trip. Like, really? You're not sober. and I haven't, and I don't know enough about I just know like that's not, you're not sober.
This is a huge topic.
And I actually want to write something about it, because I'm just like, this is just not, it's cool if you, and no judgment. Like I have like, it's cool if that's your thing, but like, don't say like, this is a path to enlightenment, because it's bullshit.
Have you ever heard the story about Ram Dass giving copious doses of LSD to his guru?
No, but I know it was part of the whole, him and Timothy Leary.
Yeah,
and the whole
so Ram Dass and Timothy Leary, just major cosmonauts getting into psychedelics and consciousness research. Ram Dass goes to India, meets Neem Karoli Baba, right, and just is blown away by all these majestic experiences there. And one day the guru asks, "What's that stuff you guys do? What's that stuff?"
Right.
And he said, "No, you don't want to do this, guru. You don't want to do it." And he said, "No, I insist." Anyway, he gives him this massive dose of LSD, and nothing happens. And then they thought there must be a mistake. He must have not, he must have put it on the side, like not put it under his tongue, or not actually taken it, because he would have just been tripping balls. And they do it again, and they watch him take it, and nothing happens. And what he surmised was that Neem Karoli Baba, Maharaji, was already there.
I love it.
There was no altitude to reach, because he was already cruising at altitude. So it nullified the physiological effect of the LSD, which is fascinating when I heard that. And that sort of turned Ram Dass off to the psychedelics. I thought, maybe I've got it wrong, that there was a window into a house that I'm able to peek through on mescaline, mushrooms, whatever.
Yeah.
But I'm not living in the house.
It's a shortcut. Yeah. And even with, people will say, okay, like smoking weed's harmless. Like, there was actually a recent Harvard study where like, jury's not out yet in terms of like damage it can do to the like growing brain of a teenager. And that's what you worry about. And I another thing, like I'm speaking anecdotally.
Sure.
I had friends who smoked so much weed in high school, and like they just like fucking disintegrated.
Yeah.
They lost ambition. They started to like lose cognitive function to some degree, and like never really amounted to anything. And so like there's something about like as the brain is formed, like maybe different if you're a fully formed brain and you're 35 and whatever, but like it's dangerous. So I think like anything that's psychoactive needs to be treated with extreme care. And it goes back to like, what do we really know with the growing human brain? And then going back to like personalization, like, have you done 23andMe? Like, what genes do you have? Like, does schizophrenia, bipolar, depression, like these things run in your family, like may not be so good. It may turn on something that you don't want turned on. So at any rate, I could talk a lot. I just have a
it's cool.
problem with it generally. And I'm not sober.
Yeah.
And I've done all this stuff.
Well, it's
long time ago.
It's a valid conversation. I think it's something that needs to be talked about from all perspectives, because I interviewed a channel yesterday named Paul Selig, fascinating guy.
Sure.
And I asked the guides, I am sober. I've been sober almost 22 years. And, people are always offering me ayahuasca journeys, come here, go there. And it's like, I'm not against the idea, because I really feel solidly grounded in the way that I live. And I love being stone cold sober. I'm very sober right now. It's the biggest high I've ever had in my life. And I've done every drug under the sun. There's nothing more, there's no high that's better than just being truly present with someone, and that's what I get to experience on a daily basis.
It's harder.
Yeah. Well, it's a lot
harder.
Like you said, the word shortcut. There's no shortcut.
You're trying to get outside yourself. That's what it comes. And nothing against that. It's a delicate. It's delicate.
Well, yesterday I asked the guides. I said, and I'm just, hey, I'm going to take it with a grain of salt. I don't know if these guides are, they're all knowing or what the deal is, but I asked the guides through Paul Selig, and the answer for me was that there's no risk to triggering your addiction again, okay, in terms of sobriety. However, you may discard a part of yourself that you don't necessarily want to let go of yet. personalities, ego shell, whatever it might be, not necessarily even with a negative connotation, but just you might not want to open that door, but you'll be okay if you do. That was the message from the guide. So it was interesting. I wouldn't say I have a pull one way or another, but as someone who's values their sobriety a lot, because if I drink or do any drugs, I mean, it's not good. I'm going to be in handcuffs. It's just instantly a fucking train wreck. But I'm also interested in consciousness, very much so, and interested in expanding my consciousness and having the most broad and deep experience of life that I can. And it seems like there are people, and have been people throughout history, that, like Michael Pollan, I haven't read the book yet either. I'm interested in doing so. It seems that there are people that have expanded in ways that don't necessarily then go off the rails and become a derelict on the street. So it's interesting. I don't know what the answer is, but it's definitely a conversation that I think a lot of us. Yeah,
it's like I'll never forget. Like someone said to me once, like, you shouldn't. There are some people who can, text and drive and be fine, and some people who can't, or drink and drive, whatever it may be. Right. Like, I think it's unique, and it's just. Psychoactive is fundamental. Like, if you think about, like, your mind is everything, and I just think it's dangerous. Like, if you lose your mind or something flips there, it's like it's catastrophic. So I think it's delicate, very delicate, and that's what's the scary part around anything that's psychoactive. It's not like I'm gonna hurt my leg. Like, if you hurt your mind, you do damage there. Like that's like can be catastrophic. So
the master governor up here between our ears.
Yeah, you lose your mind, you lose hope, like anxiety, all these things like that. That's like one thing. Like, you talk to people who have all sorts of illnesses. Like, it's just you start to lose your mind. Like, that's when things unravel. It's especially dangerous, I think.
Well, and one thing you touched on was the developing mind, and being someone that started doing drugs at a really, really young age. I don't want to like put a limiting belief on myself, but it's just a fact. I think I really did hurt myself.
Sure.
As my brain was forming, I put a lot of strange things into it.
Some people are fine, some people aren't. But you just don't know.
I don't think I am fine. I mean, I don't want to say I have any regrets, because the path is the path, and I'm very grateful for what I've been through, but I consider myself, I've never taken an IQ test, but I think I'm fairly bright. I mean, for someone that has no education, I dropped out of high school, I've been able to make a pretty good life for myself. So I must have some wherewithal.
Sure.
But I sometimes think, wow, I wonder if I would have been exceptionally intelligent had I not been, snorting crystal meth at 12 years old or whatever.
Wow,
it's like, it's even before that. But it's like, I wonder what the potential would have been, but it is what it is. But I definitely agree. I mean, there's the human body and mind is so fragile all through life, but especially in those formative years when you have a baby now, right? And you're watching that baby just like force multiply before your eyes.
Yeah.
I mean, what is that? The matter that's forming that body made of. It's made of whatever goes into it.
Yep.
It's really, really interesting. Ooh, that brings me on to a topic.
Sorry for the drug segue.
No, it's great. Don't be sorry. I love talking about this stuff, because literally just yesterday, was having a conversation about it with some entities. So it's amazing. But I wasn't necessarily going to touch on this, but I'm curious in terms of, you said you're a tester and your wife Colleen is not. Did you guys have any sort of regimen or protocol when you wanted to conceive and then have a kid? Was there testing then, or detoxing, or certain dietary things? What was the conception and birth process like for you guys, knowing what you know and having access to such a wealth of information?
Sure. It was a long process. So we were just like overjoyed when we were pregnant. Colleen didn't do a doula or anything. So Colleen actually... and something she's talked about, suffered from a pulmonary embolism flying. So we both have bad flying history. So like she was high risk. So there were things like and so PE is essentially a blood clot, travels to your lungs, like it can kill you. So like Serena Williams had a pulmonary embolism, like it's something that's genetic. And so for her, and what makes you clot is being pregnant. And so you have to go on blood thinners, and then when you give birth, you have to get off blood thinners, because then you could bleed to death. So like we didn't even have the choice. It was like, we're going Western because we want to live.
Yeah.
So like a lot
You're
of things.
not doing it in a
Sorry,
kiddie,
we went
to
no, we couldn't. It's just like we didn't like, this is a serious thing. So
Right.
and you know, everything was great and we gave birth to a beautiful daughter, but like for us it was a long process. That was like, okay, like now this is like, because of your history, it's like she couldn't even see a regular doctor. She'd just see a high risk doctor. No one would take her.
Wow.
Because of insurance, like there's liability. Like you become high risk immediately. So we sort of didn't have a choice, but everything worked out. Easy pregnancy and easy birth, and our daughter's great. So
Cool. Wow.
So that's why like Western and Eastern are not like, you need both.
Totally.
Like
totally. Well, I interviewed, I'm sure you know Robin Bearson.
Yeah.
You guys are in
Sure,
similar
we're friends.
circles.
Yeah. We have kids the same age.
Oh, right.
Dax
right.
is like, Dax and Ellie are like a month apart, I think.
Right. So I interviewed her a couple times, and last year when I was here in New York, I interviewed her again because she had just given birth, and I was quizzing her about how she did it. And it was interesting because she did an East meets West kind of mashup too. You know, she had a doula and was kind of like, I forget the exact details of it, but she said, listen, I'm all cool with the natural way, but we don't live in a natural world.
Right.
Things happen. So I'm going to try to stick as close to nature as possible. But being a doctor, I also know that sometimes there are certain interventions that are necessary and things like that. But it was interesting that a couple of my questions for her, 'cause she had a boy, as you know, I was like, did you circumcise the boy? I'm about to do a podcast about that because I personally am circumcised, but I've learned a lot about it, and it's not good. It's really bad for the male psyche in general. Another conversation, but she's like, no. She's like, we didn't really give it a lot of thought, but my husband was like, no, let's not do that. And so she didn't do that. And then I think because we're on air, she was a little bit vague about the vaccine issue because there's a lot of controversy around that. But
it's complicated.
It is very complicated, but I got the sense that she was pretty light on that practice. But it's interesting when you talk to people, you know, like Dave Asprey. I mean, he wrote a whole book about prepping to have a kid and the things that you do before and what the woman can eat during pregnancy and after. And I think it's a really important conversation to have because a lot of people go at it kind of willy-nilly, or they get pregnant without planning on it, right? And what both parents are up to, and especially in what the baby's up to in those formative years, is going to have a huge impact on their life.
Sure.
So it's cool. But you guys are doing great.
Yeah.
Cool.
A little less sleep.
The little one's a little sick today, but it just happens with babies. I want to jump back to a little zigzag here. In terms of supplementation and things like that, so we've sort of covered the drugs and things that are psychoactive and may or may not have benefits and risks and the ratio of those. But do you do anything for brain health, cognition? Are you into any nootropics or any of smart drugs, like all that kind of stuff?
No, I tend to eat like a diet that's full of fat though. So every morning, Colleen and I have organic coffee with grass-fed ghee. We don't do the oil, but just the ghee. So like every morning we start with that. I love avocados. Have a lot of avocados. So like we definitely do like a full fat diet. In terms of brain health, one of the things, it was a topic at our Revitalize event, which you definitely have to come to
I want to come to that.
We did a lot on brain health. Like it's just the numbers are just so scary. It's like if you live to age 85, you got a 50% chance you'll have dementia. It's like, it's crazy.
50%?
Yeah. And so we had
oh, that's horrifying.
What's interesting though is we had a husband and wife team of doctors, a Shares Eyes, who also are friends of Rich and Julie, and like we talked a little bit about diet, but what we asked, what's the number one thing you recommend to someone who wants to like have a healthy brain? It's purpose.
Wow.
And so like when I think about this world and we talk about like testing and food and like I definitely believe and Rich has said this too, health begins on your plate. So like you start there, it's your baseline, it's a big core of like functional nutrition and what we do here. But then it's like everything, it's purpose. It's this idea of that there's wellness like in between the lines and outside the lines. And I think that's something you never want to like lose sight of, the unknown, and purpose is a big one. And that's the number one thing. These are doctors. These are like real doctors, MD, not like
it's an unexpected
people who play
answer.
Doctors on the internet, like real MDs. You see real patients.
Right.
And like purpose. And I think that's a big thing.
Yeah, that
you
is.
can't. How do you measure purpose? You can't get labs for that. You can't. And that's a big thing. And like, I love Dave Asprey. I love testing. I love all those things. But like,
Well,
how do you test purpose?
On the psychological and spiritual note, then it's a great place to go. What's your inner relationship to your higher self, your spiritual self? What does your life look like from the inside subjectively in terms of a relationship with a higher power or
Sure.
prayer or being aligned to your truth? What are some of the things that have been useful for you?
So I grew up Christian, went to church, even taught Sunday school.
Where did you grow up?
Long Island.
Oh, okay.
Found myself like in church in college when I was like in desperate need of like, I'm going to get kicked out, or please don't let this happen. Like, a lot of like Christian, like a lot of people like only find religion when,
Yeah. We
like there are no atheists in foxholes.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Exactly. Yeah.
And so that was sort of my practice. And then I've gotten back to, religion, spirituality. So like, what does that look like? I meditate. I am a huge believer in gratitude. I think no matter what religion you subscribe to, like gratitude is the foundation of religion. Colleen and I will watch Joel Osteen on TV on Sunday.
I love him.
He's a great inspirational speaker, and there's always a great message. And so, but generally just, and I always try to like, gratitude's a big thing. That's something like daily, try to like.
Don't
really
you
be
wake up
grateful
in the
for.
morning and say, thank you.
You did your homework.
Hey.
I do.
That's cool. Yeah, I actually did that this morning in preparation for the recording.
Awesome.
Oh, man, that's cool. It's, early morning routines like that have been challenging for me because mornings are abhorrent to me. Really difficult to have any sort of cognition going on. But I think if you could bake in that sort of habit where the framework of your day is set by that very first intention.
Yep.
What do you avoid when you wake up? Are you what you do Vedic meditation?
I do everything now.
Yeah.
So like so there's like Jason pre-baby and Jason post-baby. So like pre-baby was, 20 minutes twice a day, once a day. Now post-baby, it's, a couple minutes here and there. It's a little bit of Vedic. It's a little bit of mindfulness. It's a little bit of God. Like I just like do whatever, and I always find time for it and be flexible. And it goes back to what you said earlier. You have to be flexible. Life changes, you change. I am a big believer now today. Jason, who doesn't have a lot of time with the kid and works with his wife, and like our life is pretty full and hectic of like 5 to 10 minutes. So like I go to the gym now, I do yoga, like everything's 10 minutes or less. And I feel like I'm in the best shape of my life.
Yeah, that
but
makes
like
sense.
10 minutes, like that's it.
I don't have kids, but I hear when you have kids, there's two things that go. One is sex and the other is meditation. Oh, no, 3, sleep.
Yeah, it's fair to say.
Yeah, and what are some of the things that you avoid doing first thing in the morning? Are you someone that's like, well, I'm not checking my email until I become grounded? What are your...
It depends. I try not to go to email immediately. I try not to do that, and I'm getting better at it. So like I always try, like our one ritual is like get up, our coffee with ghee, like do that, and then I'll try to like go to email. So I'll try to wait a bit, and Colleen, and we'll try to avoid talking about work in the bedroom. Smart. Immediately, and then we get downstairs and we're just like getting better, but like life happens, work happens, we work together, we're passionate about what we do. Sometimes it happens.
Yeah, I understand that. I've had a relationship with a co-business owner, and ultimately it had a lot to do with our demise because we didn't know how to find that separation.
Sure.
Laying in bed, like how much money do we have in the account? We should do this and that. It's like, talk about a block to intimacy and
it's
chemistry.
Hard. We've gotten better at it.
Yeah.
I think what's good about Colleen and I is we operate differently and we're complementary in a lot of ways.
Right.
And it works. And we've gotten better about like creating rituals around space, like morning and evening. Like Colleen can't like go deep. We're not going to go deep on financials at night. Right. It's just going to be hard to sleep.
Right.
And so we're good about carving out time there and finding space, like in those key times a day, like getting up and going to bed.
As we come to wrapping this up, I've been perusing the site, and like the MindBodyGreen site, there is so much content on there. It's like almost too much, because you can go down a rabbit hole, and there's just like anything you want to learn about in all health and wellness is there. And then there's also this massive suite of online classes and training that you can actually do if you want to take a deeper dive. What are some of the other things coming up, or part of your vision that you'd like to see, or that are coming down the road here?
Sure. So you mentioned Robin, functional nutrition. We have a functional nutrition program, which is a big part of what we do and what we believe in. We say like health starts on your plate, like food, it starts there. And then these other things like you can't exercise your way out of a bad diet, as Mark Hyman says, and we believe that. So that program specifically is like best in class functional medicine doctors. So Mark Hyman, Frank Lipman, Dr. Taz, Amy Shaw, Kelly Levesque, the nutritionist. We're actually like, it's like 20 plus hours of content. It's people buy that product, and like the feedback has been unbelievable. And so we're adding more doctors, which is super exciting. So you're going to see like some of the more big names in functional medicine being added to that training, and we're going to add them throughout the year. So to me, that's like one of the most exciting things we're doing. Like I saw personally how like nutrition played a large role, and I could talk about like I had issues with parasites a couple years ago, and like it came back to like really nutrition and functional nutrition, where I was like, holy cow, like this like fundamentally changed my life and allowed me to be at 44 like the best shape I've ever been in. And like I always say, like, how do you change people, like diet, food, like functional, talk about access, something that's so important to us at MindBodyGreen. The best functional medicine doctors like live in New York and LA. Like they're expensive, and they're hard to get to. Like you may not even get like, I love Mark, but like try getting an appointment with Mark. It's not going to happen. So to create a program with like the best people in the world is like something like access is such a huge thing for us. So like the big news is like we've never talked about that actually publicly. Like we're adding more doctors. So it's not like we've got our 8 doctors and that's it. Like we're adding a lot more, some awesome names. So that's exciting.
Great.
Yeah,
that's great. Yeah, I agree. The access is a huge issue for people that don't. You live in North Dakota, and you
can't go to a doctor, and it's complicated. You can't say like, what functional medicine? Well, I don't. It's like, good luck.
Yeah, that's cool, man. Awesome. Good for you guys. My closing question is this. So you've taught me and our audience a lot today. Who have been 3 teachers or teachings that have influenced your life in a meaningful way that you might share with our audience so that they can go study with?
Wow. So they can go study with.
I throw that in just to make it harder, because a lot of people are like, oh, my mom and dad and Jesus or Buddha. Like,
right.
It can be anyone, honestly, but it's fun when someone's like, oh, I know this author or this book or this teaching, and then we put it in the show notes and people can dive deeper, find out how you arrived at where you arrived.
So Frank Lipman, functional medicine doctor, he's my doctor. He's part of the functional nutrition program I mentioned. What I love about him, Frank, is been practicing this for years. He's in his 60s, and he's that perfect blend of, here are the labs, and then you need to get out of your head and chill out. And like that blend of like a throwback family doctor, like maybe you just need to like, maybe you're over testing, or maybe you need to just sleep a bit more, or that. Like I think that's what's interesting right now in medicine. He plays both roles. Like, here's what the labs say, here's what I say. And I think that's so powerful. So he definitely and helped me overcome parasites, and like just an amazing guy who's part of our program. So Lippman, Tara Stiles and Michael Taylor, 2 amazing yoga teachers, and Michael also does Tai Chi. We also have online offerings with on MindBodyGreen. It played a large role in my healing from debilitating back pain. So like, they've been tremendous, and like the way they practice yoga is very much in sync with what I believe. It's about movement and breathing, and not necessarily like if your right toe is aligned with the toe next to it, and is that really going to kill you unless it's unsafe. And it's like it's like really finding movement that works for you. So like those are the 3 people who I would say like really if we talk about like cores of wellness, it's like movement and nutrition.
Cool. I got to ask you real quick, if you can make it short, because I know you got to go. What'd you do about the parasites?
So like I went through a whole protocol with Frank, and it took a long time.
Kind of stuff?
Yeah, but like Frank was like, you know, you need to take the medication too.
Oh, okay.
And also like heavy on supplementation, diet. Like vegan did not work for me. Like it made it worse. Like essentially went paleo, cut out grains, and like it was a blend of supplementation and being really strict with diet for a while. It's not like, and multiple times. And it's, to me, it's like, that's the future of medicine. It's like, sometimes you need to take the medication, but then you need to supplement it, and it's nuanced. And I feel great now, but like when I was going through it at the time, like I felt like fucking terrible. And like, I'm never anxious. I was anxious. I couldn't sleep. Like, I didn't know. I went to Western doctors. They're like, you're fucking fine. And then I finally like went to Frank, and he was like, I think you got a bug. I think you got a parasite. And he was right. I did the program, and it took a while, and I stuck with it. And I was rigid about it, and I finally got through it. But I think I'm like convinced millions of people have parasites.
Oh my God. It's pandemic. People have no idea.
And you don't have to travel to Africa. They live in salad bars.
Yeah.
All around the US.
I just did an episode about it, and a brilliant doctor, and she was talking about all the ways in which these parasites and the different ones behave and the different organs they attack, and then the seemingly unrelated effects of, you know, your thyroid getting affected by parasites, and everything. Yeah, I mean, it's crazy what an impact these bugs have on you when they get out of hand, and yeah, it's very, very cool. So, and I've experienced myself. It's a much longer journey than just like, cool, I'll buy a bottle of wormwood pills, take those for a week, and I'll be fine.
Like, I tried everything. I saw like, and I went crazy Eastern. I saw like, I did colon hydrotherapy for months. I saw an iridologist. You don't even know what that is. It's like someone who looks at your eyes. Yeah. Like I went like everything to avoid like doing what I had to do in terms of medication and supplements. And when I did it finally worked.
That's good for you. You do what works.
Yeah.
Well, dude, thank you so much for joining me today. It's been a pleasure getting to know you and having a sit down. I appreciate it very much.
Likewise. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah. Look forward to seeing you again.